everything was going to go well, and which it probably didn't, as we know, as things go. And so, interesting, they record some of these things that happened around these very interesting people of this time period. I think it's about what century we're talking about, but early on, many centuries before Christ, anyway. I'm reading the story from 2 Kings 5, 1 through, and I think I ended on 14. And I am reading again out of the Eugene Peterson's contemporary translation, so it's a little bit easier to understand. I hope you'll follow with me. Naaman was general of the army under the king of Ammon, and we believe this is in the Syria area now today. Syria, the hotbed of so much going on. He was important to his master, who held him in the highest esteem because it was by him that God had given victory to Aram, a truly great man, but afflicted with a grievous skin disease. So it happened that Aram, on one of his raids, expeditions into Israel, captured a young girl who became a maid to Naaman's wife. One day she said to her mistress, "Oh, if only my master would meet the prophet of Samaria. He would be healed of his skin disease." Naaman went straight to his master and reported what the girl from Israel had said. "Well, then go," the king of Aram said, "and I'll send a letter of introduction to the king of Israel." So he went off, taking with him 750 pounds of silver. Can you imagine? 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothes. Naaman delivered the letter to the king of Israel, and the letter read, "When you get this letter, you will know that I personally sent my servant Naaman to you, heal him of his skin disease." When the king of Israel read the letter, and he was terribly upset, ripping his robes to pieces. "Am I a God who's with power to bring death or life, that I get orders to heal this man from his disease? What's going on here? Is that the king trying to pick a fight?" That's what Elisha, the man of God, heard what had happened, that the king of Israel was so distressed that he ripped his robes to shreds. He sent word to the king, "Why are you so upset, ripping your robe like this? Send him to me, and he'll learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman, with his horses and chariots, arrived in style and stopped at Elisha's door. Elisha sent out a servant to meet him with the message, "Go to the river Jordan and immerse yourself 7 times. Your skin will be healed, and you'll be as good as new." Naaman lost his temper. He turned on his heel, saying, "I thought he'd personally come out and meet me, call on the name of God, wave his hand over the diseased spot, and get rid of the disease. The Damascus rivers of Ammon and Parthar are cleaner by far than any of the rivers in Israel. Why not they than them? At least I'd be clean." He stalked off, mad as a hornet. But his servants caught up with him and said, "Father," now remember this is a term of endearment and also of honor, "if the prophet had asked you to do something hard and heroic, wouldn't you have done it? So why not this simple, wash and be clean?" So he did it. He went down and immersed himself in the Jordan 7 times, following the orders of the holy man. His skin was healed. It was like the skin of a little baby. He was as good as new. These are the words of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now Naaman, very interesting character in the story. He had a problem with a skin disease. Now they said it wasn't leprosy because that's something totally different. Oftentimes in the scriptures they refer to leprosy, but just to get in mind, it was a skin disease. You know what a skin disease is like? Some of you ever had that? Itch, itch, itch. And it won't go away. You end up with scabs because it's like a mosquito bite that's gotten worse, isn't it? Like, you know what a mosquito bite is? You start scratching it, it just gets worse. Well, apparently this is what was happening to him. He was held in high respect by everyone, but yet he was irritated. You know what it is to be irritated because you have something that's bothering you? He was in distress. He wasn't pleasant to be around, obviously. And here is a man of leadership. of great strength, great authority over so many people, so many of the troops. And yet, in this household was a young girl. Don't you love it when a child says something that's so profound? Don't you love it? Don't we forget to listen sometimes? The child said something very profound and says, I know how you can be healed. Well, she tells that to the wife, to Naaman's wife. And she tells them about this special person in the land of Israel. This is the land that they had raided different times. Can you imagine going into this land? So he goes to his superior, his master it's called, and he gets a letter of introduction. You know what a letter of introduction is, don't you? I know this person. I have faith in this person. I give you my guarantee around this person. Sometimes when you go to a job, you're given a letter of introduction. So he's given a letter of introduction, goes in there to the king, presents himself in the letter, and the king is unnerved. Is this a plot? Is this some kind of way of trying to destroy us again? And so it's kind of unnerving. Elisha, the prophet, hears about it. And he sends word to the king of Israel and says, I know what you can do. Send him to me. And that's what he does. He goes with all of his loot. Can you imagine all of this loot going? And he goes there, knocks on the door, and who answers the door but a servant? Not Elisha. And it's the servant that is told to give him the message. Go and immerse yourself in the waters of the Jordan. Not whether the Jordan was muddy or murky or what, or full of debris. But he was offended. Very much offended. Here I am, coming all this way with all of this stuff, all of this loot, and you're just having a servant talk to me? Interesting, isn't it? Elisha sends the servant out to talk with Naaman. So Naaman, angry, despondent, said, I can do this at home. I can go dip myself in the Kansas River if I wanted to. Isn't that good enough? And he says, no, you need to go to Muddy Creek, or you need to go to Soldier Creek and do that. He wants to stomp away and forget about it. And his servants come up and say, now, if it was anything difficult, wouldn't you have done it? And so he immerses himself, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. It was almost, but not quite, not 5, not 6, but on the 7th. Something happened to Naaman. He looked around, and he had a healing. It took a while. It took a number of people convincing him that this was an important thing to do. It was that dark time that he was experiencing when he thought everything was working against him. He thought things would never come back to what he thought his life should be. Barbara Brown Taylor, one of my favorite writers, she's written numerous books, a wonderful lecturer. She has written her latest book, is Learning to Walk in the Dark. Do you know what it is to walk in the dark? How many of you like nighttime? Some of you do. As a child, I always needed to have a nightlight on at nighttime. Now I want it dark when I sleep. There's something, she says, that is revealed to us in the dark. Amazing, isn't it? What are those lessons when things are really gotten us down? When everything around us seems like there's a cloud hanging over us. She said, what can we learn? Rather than trying to move away from it, trying to find something to dispel it. We want to take a pill. We want to have some kind of something or other to help us to move away from that. But there are good things that happen in the dark. How many of you close your eyes when you kiss that special person? You don't keep your eyes open, do you? I hope that you close it and savor the moment, embrace the moment. Are those times when you are listening to something and it's so intense you have to close your eyes to listen to it, to let it absorb. Those times when nothing else will do but to let vision recede. Let vision have a second place. Abraham, that great patriarch, was told to go out at nighttime and look at the stars and said, this is what the generations will look like, all from you. Now, it took a long time for this to happen, for he and Sarah to have Isaac finally. They were almost too ancient, but yet God moves in mysterious ways. God's wonders to perform. Or Moses, receiving the Ten Commandments, has to go up into the mountain, and it's so bright that they have to wear a veil. He has to wear a veil. It's in that dark cloud that he receives those special commandments that we call the 10. In the dark. Sometimes we hear about Jacob running away, stealing his brother's birthright, and it's at nighttime when God revealed something to him that he needed to hear. Or Joseph the dreamer. Things happened in his dreams at night. To predict or maybe to be prophetic in the future. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Just close your eyes right where you are. And listen to things going on around you. Sometimes somebody said when I close my eyes and relax, I can hear my heartbeat. And in a very quiet place, sometimes I can even hear my circulatory system moving through my body. In the dark, so much is revealed. Barbara Brown Taylor says that sometimes we have to learn to stop running the show. Sometimes we have to learn some humbling experiences. Sometimes we have to lose control over what we want in our lives. Naaman understood that. He thought he had lost control, and yet he had gained so much more. She says we have to sign a waiver that allows us to bump into something that may have frightened you at first. Working with God, she said there are no such things as seat belts or safety devices when you walk into the presence of the divine. That heavenly presence asks us to come and sit while I visit with the feelings I'd rather not have. If you haven't opened your eyes by now, you can. But I mean that those experiences, sometimes that confuse us, throw us off balance. We grapple around, we look for wholeness and salvation. Salvation, means coming to wholeness, that we are saved from sometimes ourselves. And we're looking for reconciliation in our relationship. What do you mean by reconciliation? Is to mend those relationships that have been broken. A belief that God is at work in those times when things seem so out of whack. We are trapped sometimes in our own pain and all hurt and darkness. And we try to seek for daylight. There was a man called John of the Cross, a 16th century mystic. A mystic is one of those who concentrates all their life, men and women, focusing on God, meditating on God, looking, searching the scriptures, listening in prayer. People do it so ardently that sometimes they literally sweat blood. They are so into Paul, the apostle, talks about some of those experiences that he's had with God. He said, I can't even use the words to tell you what it's like because they're not words to describe it. This encounter these people have. Well, John of the Cross, 16th century mystic, went up against some of the rules or the customs of the church. angered the powers that be, was imprisoned in a cell. There was only a little slit of light that came through the letter. And he started to think about and meditate on the darkness and the light. You know, you don't underappreciate the light until you know what dark is. You know what happens when all the electricity goes off at home? What is the first thing you look for? Light, a flashlight, a candle, anything. We open up the curtains sometimes and they've never been opened up before. And we're looking for light anywhere. So what happened to him, he decides to write about his experiences. He doesn't write about how awful it was. He writes about the joy that he experienced, the delight. And he talks about the love story that he has with the elusive love of God. God was revealed to him in a whole new different way. God's dark night of the soul is what he wrote. A gift intended for your liberation, Barbara Brown Taylor said. Faith that will not give up and offer us a safe place. If you're a follower of God, you can't always be in that safe place. Part of our job is to be risk takers, to step out into the dark, step out into those areas that frighten us the heck out of us. I would say hell, but I don't want to be overdone. Frighten the heck out. Micki has experiences I want you to hear her to share with us today. Of an experience of being in Africa as a young person. She was in Africa for how many years? 3 years she was in Africa. Tell us about your experiences with dark. We often talk as Africa as the dark continent.
God shed a lot of light in my life there. When I went, I just graduated college and just thought I was going to go change the world. I had all this knowledge and I was grand and glorious and I was going to go help people. And after being there about 6 months, I was so lonely and I didn't understand the language. And I just knew that God had abandoned me and my life was never going to be okay. And my family, something bad would happen to them back in the States and I wouldn't get to see them ever again. And my life was just horrible. And one night I was so upset. I went to bed crying, and I cried, and I cried. And finally, at 2:30 in the morning, I was still crying. It had been 2 or 3 hours. And I remember thinking, I probably need to drink some water because it's so hot here, I'm going to dehydrate from all these tears. I got down on my knees on my little concrete floor in my mud hut, and I cried for another hour and a half. And I wrestled with God. And I said, God, all I see is darkness. I can't do this. I cannot stay here. How am I ever going to make it? I don't understand what you want me to do. I thought I was coming here to help and to teach and to do health education with groups of village women. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what I need to know. And finally, at 4 in the morning, it was as if God said to me, Micki, you have to let it go. You can't be in control. God had to take me 7,000 miles to say, Micki, just because you're the firstborn in your family and you think you know everything because you went to college, you don't know nothing. And you gotta let me lead. You gotta let me be the one in charge. And just a little bit after that, it was a time of year where the sun came up really, really early. And so I heard donkeys starting to move around, and the chickens and roosters were starting to move around and make noises outside at my neighbors. And I just kind of fell into a heap on the floor. And it was truly a life-changing experience for me. Because I am a person who likes to have control, and I like to know where things are going and what's going to happen next. And you know, the best way I found to live my life, even as a type A control freak, is to let go and let God. I know it's cliche, but it really turned my life around as a young adult. And it's made me a better person and a better pastor to always put God first. Are there days when I think that I am right and if people would just do it my way, we'd be there quicker? Oh yeah, I still have those days and those issues. But I want you to know that in that moment of darkness on a dirty concrete floor when I thought life couldn't get any worse, God said, let go, Mickey. If you let go, I'll lead you to the light. And I can say the journey has been well worth it. So I agree with Barbara Brown Taylor that Pastor Bev is quoting to us that God does amazing things. And it's almost like sometimes we have to have the dark so God can get our attention. And it was a place with no electricity or running water, so when it was nighttime it was nighttime. I couldn't flip the switch. I had to find the lantern, and I had to make sure I had oil in it, and then I could get it going. And so it was just dark. So I invite you, as you move into the rest of Advent, too, to think about the light and darkness in your life and what God might be inviting you to let go of in the darkness so that you can move further into the light.
I believe that God is beckoning this church to see what lies ahead, frightened and yet unafraid. Risk takers, but yet embracing whatever comes. Strengthened and encouraged and not afraid to walk into the shining light of a new day. Are you with me? Is an adventure worth it? An adventure in God's new presence, in a new way. Maybe some of it is an old way, but an opportunity to strengthen what God has started here. That you are a part of what is happening now and for the future. It's up to us together to do something. Don't you feel the presence of God working in and through